rest of their lives to getting answers about his disappearance.
Right there. See? Look. There's another spark. You see what else?
Well, hello, everybody, and welcome back to Tales from Delphi National Park, the podcast where my friend and I talk about the weird, scary, and mysterious true stories that happen in our neck of the woods. My name is Hunter, and as always, I am joined by my friend, Ben. Ben, how are you doing?
Happy holidays.
Happy holidays. It is the time of, as some people would celebrate Christmas. It's Christmas time. I think we're on the 23rd. We're recording this.
Yeah, Christmas Eve.
So probably by the time we are posting this, it'll probably be around Happy New Year's.
Probably be by next Christmas at least.
By next Christmas.
It'll be around, sometime before then.
And that's awesome.
That's great.
Well, that's great because, we've been really, really good about making sure we're posting every other Friday, like we said.
Mm-hmm.
Right?
Yeah. And if anyone didn't see us post, what was it supposed to be last Friday when we did post? It's probably because the algorithm censored us or something.
Yes, it was something like
it wasn't
probably
us.
Yeah, it wasn't our fault. So our hope is to post every other Friday, but I think we got a little ahead of ourselves, and
I think it was mainly me, right?
It was me because I had to edit it.
Yeah, but I just had I had 2 weeks that were basically just 2 sets of finals weeks. That I wasn't anticipating to be that.
So it's both of us, Ben.
Yeah.
It's both of us.
This isn't going to work, Hunter.
We're actually done with this.
Yeah, this is actually the last episode. Thank you all for an amazing journey, but we just can't,
we just
circumstances.
This is our last YouTube video.
Let's look back on all the wonderful memories we've made together.
We have 3 videos.
It's a compilation that's like 30 seconds.
This is one of them.
It's just our YouTube shorts, just all 4 of them lined up.
Yeah.
Or however many there are.
It's like, oh, this is awesome. Wow. This is great. Well, anyway, no, we're sorry about that. If you're just sitting on the edge of your seat, which
you're
we don't have,
avid Tales from Delphi National Park listener like we are,
which we don't have many, but we have some.
We have some,
and for those who are our friends or family who are here, hey, thanks for being here and supporting us. So those who are new and found us online, thank you.
Welcome.
This is great.
Yeah.
So we have one person who constantly dislikes our video, and I'm like, that's fine.
Can you tell us just one feedback. Person?
It's just one person.
Wait, is it just one, or is it the same person?
I don't know. It's just at least we get
it's
one
always
dislike
at least one.
on everything.
Oh, okay.
Which is fine.
I mean, that's fair. I would dislike our video.
I would also not enjoy this.
I'd be like, who are these guys?
Right.
Who do they think they are?
There's a guy named Chris Tenenfeld. That's his.
I saw that. What a strange last name.
What a stranger. He's probably
we don't know him, but
yeah, we have no idea who this guy is. He's so annoying.
He left some interesting comments.
He just leaves comments on all of our stuff.
Yeah, we've been considering.
He hates me and glazes Ben.
We've been considering filing harassment charges, but
why would you want to harass him when he just always is like, "I love Ben Hyatt."
I mean, it's it's
Man,
just
Hunter
forward,
sucks.
Yeah,
it's fine.
Anyway,
so but for those who are here and are supporting us again, is it a small amount of people? Yeah.
Yeah.
But we're still really
it's probably getting smaller the more we just talk about things instead of starting the episode.
This is a part of
every
it.
Every 2 seconds, it's just another viewer just clicks off.
So it's the start of an episode.
Not enough dopamine.
Okay. Well, anyways, thanks for watching. Thanks for being there for us today. Except Chris, we love all of you. Here's a question for you, Ben.
Mm-hmm.
What are we talking about today? Now that you want to, get the dopamine rush out of the way.
I'm glad you asked, Hunter, because today we are talking about one of the oldest, I think probably the oldest, I don't know. I don't know like how we categorize things, but one of the oldest mysteries in American history, that of the lost colony of Roanoke. Now, I feel like
Ooh. I would say it's probably it's post European settlement history. Does that make sense?
post
Because it's like it goes right to.
pre.
Does that make sense? Because there's obviously, besides the settlement of Europeans to the continent of the United States, there were, there's longer history. If that makes sense. So you're saying it's the
I'm saying it's like one of
oldest
the
history that we have an account of
yeah.
the settlers that came from Europe. If that makes sense.
In terms of like mysteries, like I don't really know. Like I
Yes.
know there's like there were Spanish colonies already prior to Roanoke. I think the whole point of like Roanoke and a few colonies before it was England trying to like establish their own in response to like Spanish colonization. And I'm sure like like Leif Erikson has shown up well before them.
Right.
Like Christopher Columbus obviously. But like in terms of mysteries on the continental US, this is I think one of the earliest.
Of that. Yeah.
Yeah.
At least very highly documented. I
If
feel.
anyone wants to dispute that in the comments, please do, because we are engagement farming. It's
We are engaged
very
in farming.
intentional. Half of the things we're
Ben's-
going to say today
Ben's
are going to
just
be
gonna
incorrect.
say very
Just to-
incorrect stuff, so
Yeah.
people will just come and comment.
And that's
on it.
actually when Pocahontas and John Smith found the Roanoke colonists. They swooped in. It was
They
crazy.
swooped in.
And then Christopher Columbus was there doing his stuff, and George Washington arrived. It was crazy.
This is. That's I don't know what to do. I don't know what to do any of that.
Okay.
That just sounds like a Fortnite skin lineup.
It's coming.
And then Master Chief showed up.
It's coming. Now that you
He's-
said it, you're
he's here.
manifesting it.
I manifest
The George Washington skin.
the George Washington skin on Fortnite. Anyway, and
The
then
Declaration of Independence
Kendrick
plaque
Lamar
coming.
showed up, and SZA was there, and we had a whole party,
And we all danced and sang, and everyone clapped. Everyone clapped.
and
for me.
everyone was clapping.
Yeah, it was great. You had to be there.
Well, yeah. So we're excited about that. I'm excited to get into that.
Mhm.
Excited. Should
Yeah,
be
I'm
fun.
excited.
I think it's a more like folk tale
Yeah.
kind of thing. It's more of like the American folk tale type of story. So I'm excited to.
Well, I think it's because a lot of this mystery comes from just like a lack of information. Like there's just a certain point
Right
where
on it.
there wasn't anyone who saw these people, and then they were just gone. And then
Well,
when you have an absence of information, that's where the guessing begins, and that's like where folktales and folklore and
right. They come up.
just
It's also kinda
rumors,
like-
you know.
The fear of like discovery and like going and settling and like moving and like going to a new world. You have this like, or quote unquote new world. You have this like these crazy stories that come up of people going into this unsettled area and then just disappearing off the map, or going into areas where they shouldn't be going, or going into areas that were settled and they were like, we want to take that. And it's like, well, there's sometimes that's a really sad truth and reality, especially of American history. And there's just these crazy stories of people doing that. It's almost like it's like this divine thing that comes in and is like, hey, you did a bad thing here. And now this weird, mysterious tale comes to play of just these people dropping off of the face of the map. So I think it's fun. It has a lot of like air of mystery, and I'm excited to get into it. You ready?
Yes, sir. I guess
All right.
we're gonna have you start, right?
Yes, I'll start, but thanks for joining us today. We hope to release an episode every other Friday, and you can find those on either YouTube, Spotify, or Apple Podcasts. So, without further ado, let's get cozy, gather around the campfire, and hear some tales from Delphi National Park. You do that every time.
I didn't make a noise that time. I think last time I went.
You didn't make a noise.
But I do that.
You made the little fingies.
You say it so
like-
spookily.
Spookily.
Tales.
Well, all right. I'm gonna read this.
Oh, before you do,
oh,
this,
sure.
Introduction. This thing we're gonna read real quick. That kind of gives the basic beats of what happened up to the disappearance. Is from 2 articles by the National Park Service. So they are public domain, but I wanted to make sure that we credit them because I was looking through their kind of like their policy on that, and they were like, we appreciate it's public domain, but we appreciate attribution. So the stuff we're about to read is just like I think a pretty decent summary of the story that is written out on their website. We'll provide the links obviously in the description of this video if you want to go look into that more yourself. But yeah, credit where credit is due.
Awesome. Appreciate Ben did a lot of the research on this episode, so I'm really excited to.
So much research.
So much.
A lot of original sources linked through Wikipedia. So
original sources linked through Wikipedia. My gosh, I can't speak.
yeah,
but I'm excited.
It's over. Cut. We gotta do it again. Oh my
Wait,
gosh.
this sucks. This is so dumb. Stupid.
It's okay. We're getting there.
All right. So this is 1587, the Lost Colony. So the Lost Colony, and I've heard it be just instead of the Lost Colony of Roanoke, I've just heard the Lost Colony is kind of how it's titled. So
Yeah, same.
So let me read this. So led by John White, the colonists arrived at Roanoke in July, but it was not their intended destination. Roanoke Island was to only be a stopping point on this voyage, so White could hopefully make contact with a very small garrison left on the island after the departure of 1585. Instead, the colonists were to sail up to the Chesapeake Bay to find a more suitable area of settlement. However, the flotilla's captain, is that how you say that word?
Flotilla. It's just
Flotilla.
yeah, like how it's written.
Flotilla's captain, Simon Fernandez, refused to take the colonists farther up the coast. The excuse being the summer was rapidly ending. So I'm guessing that was north.
Yeah,
wanna take them
so
north.
Roanoke is in the Outer Banks, which is basically just like there's this strip of thin land on like the coast of North Carolina, and then there's like a bay with Roanoke in it.
There's a show about that, right, Ben?
Yeah, the Outer Banks. I have certain people I know who really, invested in that show. I haven't really seen it,
invested. Well, it didn't because of the show, like the traveling to the Outer Banks became like really popular.
Yeah,
too.
I think so. I'm assuming any
everybody wanted to
popular
visit.
show. That's what happens.
Anyway.
It's like, oh, Breaking Bad. I'm gonna do that. Wow, that looks sick.
Wait, what?
It's a big popular show,
Breaking Bad? Yeah.
Wow,
I want to break bad.
that's sick, dude. I am gonna Better Call Saul. That's crazy.
I am gonna Better Call Saul.
Oh,
I am gonna the Penguin.
Also, it mentioned up there. There's a departure of a 1585 expedition earlier in
Yeah.
this story, which I kind of cut out for time. They
Yeah.
talk about how before Roanoke there was I think like an initial expedition, like 1583, I think, that tried to establish a colony there. It was mainly like military in nature. It wasn't necessarily like
yeah.
colonists there to like settle and make a home. And then the leader of that had departed, and John White is leading another expedition, which is the Roanoke colony.
Did he depart with the garrison then? In your readings, did you see that, or was it like the leader departed and left them?
I'm pretty sure the
And
leader
they were
just
about to meet him.
departed and left like a small group of men there to try to hold down the fort. And as we'll see
Oh,
later,
and
they didn't
then-
really they kind of were lost too, but it was more like, oh, they're here and they're dead.
Yeah.
A lot of this story, which I think was probably the most horrifying part of it to me, was just how the leaders of these expeditions don't really care about the people they're leading a lot of the time. I'm not necessarily
Yeah.
about John White, but there's a lot of people like Sir Walter Raleigh and all these people. You can tell it's like they're motivated solely by like what they can gain from an expedition, like monetarily or like for their name, which is
yeah.
like not bad. but you just end up seeing like people who are just like the normal people in this expedition or in this process, like the lower level people just completely like discarded because like the leaders just don't care.
Well, yeah, it says this because it says, however, the flotilla's captain, Simon Fernandez, refused to take the colonists further to the south, the excuse being that the summer was rapidly ended. So the colonists were just left at Roanoke Island. So just like, here you go.
Yeah, and they had like boats and stuff, but like just you and you'll see that more as we go through the story. But there's just this repeating idea of like, we could save these people, but also like, how will it make us money? And then like, oh, it's not going to make us money. So what if we like don't save them, or what if we don't look for them? And I feel like a lot. Yeah, we'll get into later like theories about what happens, but I feel like a lot of the story is just about like human nature being like, oh, I don't care. Sorry.
I don't care.
Oh, you're lost and you're going to die. That sucks. It sucks to suck, dude.
That's so crappy, dude. But hey, I'm going to go home.
Oh, dude, I left you there and you have no way to get back. Oh, dude,
Dude,
I sympathize.
Sucks, bro.
Wow. Anyway, I'll see you later.
Anyway, see ya. I'll see you back in which also the journey from is a grueling journey. Like
yeah,
on a
it's
ship.
like months on a boat in like a wooden, moldy, wet. Everything's like it's just I can't even imagine. I've been sailing a couple times on like really, like obviously sailing now is just like there's a different standard. Like even like the most basic boat now is just like has a basic level of it's watertight, it's very secure, it's very most of them are very well manufactured. It's just I couldn't even imagine.
All right. Well, so then on July 22nd, 1587, White and the colonists set afoot on Roanoke Island. The only clue as to the fate of the previous garrison, there you go, was a sun-bleached skeleton of one of the men. Nice.
Yeah.
Super dope.
Oh.
Really ominous.
Turns out when we abandon people on a random country that we don't have any other people on, they end up dead. What happened? What do you mean?
It's weird.
Huh.
So the colonists got work rebuilding and refurbishing the fortification and dwellings left by the 1585 expedition. So the previous garrison.
Yeah.
By the end of July, they had made substantial progress. White, however, was convinced that he could move the colonists north to Chesapeake, their intended destination, before winter. So he's like, I want to.
Yeah, because that's where they were headed initially. Right. And it's just because their captain, who again is one of these leaders, is just like, I don't really want to do that. I don't really care. It's just like, let's just stay at this place here, let's just stay at the place where there's the sun-bleached skeleton of the former people who died here,
Yeah. It's like this seems fine.
Yeah.
This seems like a good space to stay at,
Good aura.
Good aura.
Good vibes.
There's a good vibe around here, dude. This guy sitting next to, like, freezing to death next to a sun-bleached skeleton. It's a good vibe, bro.
It's pretty sick.
It's great. I mean, I guess it was July, but,
Yeah.
Okay, so once again, the tenuous relation. So this is, they intended to leave, but once again, the tenuous relationship between the English and how do you pronounce that?
I think it's Algonquin.
Algonquin?
Yeah.
Okay. Apologies if we got that wrong, but Algonquin broke down shortly after the colonists' arrival. George Howe was ambushed and killed by members of the Second.
Yeah, Second tribe. George Howe, I think, is he's one of the leaders on the expedition. I think he was in a more like, he was one of the leaders. I don't remember if his capacity was like military, like security, or more like an investor, but he's a leader there.
Yeah, he was ambushed. In retaliation, White and his men attacked what they thought was Second Village on the mainland. It was Croatoan, scaring relations even further. Awesome.
Yeah.
Super dope.
So they just attack a village in retaliation.
So we take their land.
And they kill the wrong people.
They take their land, and they're like, dude, these guys are just mad at us for some reason. And then they go, oh, dude, like, that sucks. So then the people come and retaliate, and they're like, oh, you can't do that, dude. And they're like, we're gonna fight back. Not only do they fight back, they also kill the wrong people.
Yeah. I mean, I've as a colonist, like, you don't really have a contact. You're just like, this is me, and then there's these people who are different, and they're all the same type of different to me because I don't. I'm just completely not
Oblivious.
at all sensitive to any difference. And also, like, I view these people probably in a way that isn't great in terms of like, oh, there's like, oh, the native people, they're lower or whatever. So
Right. They don't
here's like,
understand.
oh, here's some natives. Let's just kill them. They're probably
just kill them.
related.
Yeah.
It's like, okay,
It's sad.
it is sad.
But it's also like, yeah. It's
It's
sad.
not like the
It's just sad.
expectations are high for this time period.
Right. I wasn't like, man, dude, wow.
They did that? What?
They did that?
What did they
People
do?
did that?
Oh man!
Wow. Anyway, it's sad. It's a super sad situation.
Yeah,
but
for
that's
sure.
not unexpected. The one bright spot in the month of did I? No, yeah.
No,
It was Croatoan
you're
scaring
right.
relations even further. So now they're scarring the relationships
with other tribes.
of the tribes relationship.
Especially Croatoan, which is I think going to be important later. So
Right. Well, it's like the Ross. Yeah.
yeah.
Croatoan.
Anyway, so they're scarring the
Oh.
relationship with that tribe specifically, but
Yeah, and then the one bright spot in the month of August for White and the colonists was the birth of Virginia Dare, the English child born in the New World. Her birth signified the possibility the colony may very well take hold. Right, so it's like the first
first baby on
You
the new
on
world,
the new lands
on the
Yeah.
continental U.S. for the English at least.
So, yeah. So the threat of the Algonquin attack, the lack of reliable food sources, and the approach of the approaching winter forced White to return to England for more settlers and supplies. While White left for England in late August, having only been on Roanoke for slightly over a month. Prior to leaving, it was determined that the remaining colonists would split into two groups. One group would stay at Roanoke Island, while another headed inland in search of a permanent settlement and more potential supplies. In addition, it was agreed that should the colonists leave Roanoke Island prior to White's return, they would carve their destination into the nearby tree. Okay, interesting. Knowing a little bit about this, that makes
a lot of sense.
makes some sense.
Yeah.
John White arrived in England on November 8th, 1587, and immediately reported to Sir Walter Raleigh.
Yeah. He's like he's a big name from this
I'm
time,
bad
and
in history.
he's like the figurehead as well as the leader of a lot of expeditions
Right.
to the New World. But I guess one
So
thing
that
to note,
sets up.
Yeah, you
what
go
was I
ahead.
saying? I was gonna say that sets up like everything to the point of where the mystery starts to get in. But that's kind of the background, right? That's the background
Yeah.
that we're about to get to. And what were you gonna say? One point you had.
so White is the grandfather of Virginia Dare. It was his daughter's
Oh,
child.
okay.
And when he decided to go back as the leader to request of people like Sir Walter Raleigh more men, more supplies, because they were struggling. I think they were having trouble growing crops because I'm pretty sure there was a significant drought during that time that really hurt the colonists in terms of being able to make food. The relationship
Right.
with the native tribes was obviously not great. He leaves and he has a wife, daughter, and granddaughter that he has to leave behind to go do
Yeah.
this, which is, I feel like would just be a really difficult thing to have to do. Imagining like myself as like in that scenario. But he leaves with the purpose of trying to get stuff to help them, hopefully. to
Right.
help
He's like, hey,
people
we've
there.
kind of represented that we could stay here for a bit. We need more supplies. We need more stuff. Right. So okay.
But yeah, Virginia Dare, remember the name. Might come up later. Or actually, I guess just Dare, because if it's not
Dare in
necessarily
general?
Virginia. But yeah, just
Okay.
that family structure, just generally, we'll come back to it. I'm going to read this next section, which is The Search for the Lost Colony, again from the National Park Service, which I feel like just did a really good job kind of breaking down this general
Mhm.
story, giving us a thing to jump off of. So, after John White's departure from Roanoke Island in August 1587, neither he nor any other Englishman ever saw the colonists again. Spoiler alert. Yeah, the colony is the lost colony, so just in case that wasn't clear, yeah, that's all you need to know.
You're gone.
But I'll keep
If
it.
you haven't heard the story before, that
It's just funny
They
because
were
like
lost.
this section kind of breaks down what happens next, but then it's also just like this is
that's what happened. Yeah.
this is what happened. In case you don't want to hear the rest of this, when he reached England in November 8th, so what is that, like 3 months later, White immediately began to assemble a fleet to carry supplies to America, and within 4 months he was ready to sail. However, the impending attack by the Spanish Armada led the Privy Council to prohibit his leaving England. Two of his smaller ships, the 30-ton Bark Brave and the 25-ton Pinnacle Roe. I think Bark and Pinnacle are just two terms for like different types of boat. I know Pinnacle's like a smaller vessel usually. I'm assuming Bark's maybe like slightly bigger because they're slightly heavier weight there. But two of his boats, which are both smaller relative to the fleet he was trying to assemble, were deemed inadequate for defense purposes and permitted to sail. So the idea there is the Spanish Armada is probably going to attack England. I think it's like the Anglo-Spanish War that's about to break out or is happening. And the government essentially says we need any vessel that can be involved in fighting or securing this country to not leave because we want like as much defense as possible.
Right. Yeah.
So he's trying to use some boats and they're like, we need these. We're going to commandeer these. We need these for defense. But he has two that are small enough and not probably going to be needed for defense anyway, so he can try to take those. So anyway, on the voyage, White's party followed the usual practice of engaging in piracy along the way, you know, as one would, I guess, in wartime. Unfortunately, for both White and the colony, French ships attacked them and took their supplies. They limped back to England, and White did not reach Roanoke until 1590, which is
so this was
3 years after he left.
Yeah. So 3 years. Okay. Okay. Yeah. I'm tracking. I have comments on that, but we can move on.
Do you want to give those comments now, or?
Trying to think. 1590 for everything, like basically them to just kind of blip off the map. It's not like they died.
Yeah.
I don't know how long it takes for like stuff to decompose, but like it's just you'll see like there's a lot of almost without a trace type of thing. So it's just very interesting. Like only 3 years.
Yeah, I see
for
what you're
them to
saying. That like 3
hop off the
years,
face of the earth.
given what is coming up in terms of there's in terms of evidence of what happened and remains, it doesn't necessarily make sense that
Right.
so much time passed.
Which I mean, I guess 3 years is a long time, but if you think about it, it's like also not
Yeah.
when you have like a whole civilization in an area and then they're just kind of like, bye.
I mean, even 1585 to 1587 was between the first colony and Roanoke, and they found the skeleton. You know, like they found remains of people
Right. They
from like
were-
a small
yeah.
garrison, which I assume is less than the 100. I think it's like 115 colonists that were arrived at Roanoke to establish it.
Yeah.
So I get kind of what you're saying, that like there's a lot here to just disappear, but
Just to disappear.
we'll get
Anyway,
to that.
okay. Yeah, continue. Start this. Continue.
Yes, sir. However, it was not until March 20th of 1590 that the relief expedition sailed from Plymouth. Again, plundering the seas would be its primary objective. White was only a passenger. Relief of the colony was secondary. The fleet took several prizes as it passed through the Caribbean and did not reach Hatteras, an inlet near the modern Oregon Inlet, until the 15th of August. I believe that's just like an area like kind of approaching the coast near the
Okay.
Outer Banks.
Okay.
Shallow water made it necessary to anchor 3 miles offshore. The next day, they saw smoke rising south of the inlet, and thinking it was a signal fire, wasted time and energy heading towards it. When they finally attempted to reach Roanoke's Island in 2 small boats, the weather changed and a northeaster caused huge waves. A northeaster, I believe, is just like a weather movement coming from the northeast.
Yeah.
Not to over-explain things, but
No, yeah, you're good.
Spicer, who I believe is just one of the people on the boat with them, Spicer's boat overturned, and he and 6 of his men drowned. Finally,
Sucks.
on the 18th of August, after like the attempt already they made once to get to Roanoke, storm came in, killed some of their men. 18th of August, 1590, White reaches Roanoke Island. There he found the houses taken down and the word Croatoan carved on the palisade that had been built around the settlement site during his absence. Rough weather prevented their going to Croatoan and forced them to return to England rather than to winter in the Caribbean as they first planned.
Okay.
A lot to unpack there.
Not to unpack. First of all,
Mm-hmm.
I forgot that he never went in to like look at Croatoan. Like he never went in to confirmed
No.
if they were at Croatoan.
Yeah. No, but at that point in time, and as far as from what I've read, it sounded like he was kind of just there along with these people who were there for different reasons. So they were like, okay, we'll go to Roanoke, buddy. And then he gets there, and there's not a single trace besides, like, there's the structure still, and there's like,
Well,
the
it
wall
also
around
says
it, but there's no trace
taken
of the
down.
people.
What's taken down mean?
I think
'Cause I know-
that means just like any houses that would be more like temporary would have been like dissembled, and I guess like the meaning of that would be, it seems like wherever they went, there was a intentional leaving. You know, it wasn't like things were still up there and they were attacked and there were remains or like stuff. It's just like they intentionally just left without a trace.
Here's my thing. Ben.
Yeah.
I think this is solved. I'm just saying, like, literally the dude said, hey, if I go, write the destination where you ended up
Yeah.
on something.
Mm-hmm.
He comes back 3 years, like 2.5 years late at this
Yeah.
point,
3 years later,
okay?
roughly.
3 years later, not what the intended time was supposed to be.
He's supposed to be back within less than a year.
And he
Seems
comes back and he's like, wow, where'd everybody go? And I was like, I followed their instructions, wrote Croatoan on the thing, and then said, man, can we go inside? And they're like, it's raining. He's like, good point. Peace. And then went back to England.
Yeah. They weren't even, I think initially it was like, oh, we can weather in the Caribbean if we have to and like stay in the area and then we can go back up. But like they just left. And I don't think it was necessarily his decision. Like, again, like I said, like he was just kind of as a passenger. And it seems
Right.
like from what I've read, he was like, we need to go look. And they were like, sorry, buddy, we don't have time. Just like, again, that like theme of like my family, like my
He
wife
can't do
and my
anything.
daughter and my
family's there, and
granddaughter
they're like,
could still be alive here. And they're like, yeah, it is right next door. Like it's in the same bay. We just don't, it's just storms.
it's just storms.
And I
dude.
get
It's-
like, they had, I guess, like 6 men die just because like
Yeah.
a storm showed up. So like, I think you understand eventually the times that like death was so much more like common.
oh yeah,
in these
if
contexts.
you stay out in the rain for 4 hours, you're dead. Like stuff like that. Like,
Yeah, and I guess in that context, it's like we could risk our lives to see if these people who maybe aren't even alive, but I'm not gonna do that. Like I don't care.
sure.
I don't know about John White. From what I can tell and the vibe I got, maybe I'm just like imputing myself onto him. But it seems like a lot of like decisions to like leave them were more like he just like was what's the word, a victim of circumstance.
He was.
It's just
He
like-
couldn't. Right. I don't know if I wouldn't blame it on the man.
Yeah.
But I would say it's just funny to me knowing some of the like theories, which
Yeah.
the ones we'll mainly talk about are more like grounded in reality. Some of them I'm like, you got all that from a pretty easy to explain. Doesn't, you know what? It's fine. Anyway,
And like even like you said, this is the story doesn't mention this, but they talked about how they were gonna write where they were going on a tree, right?
yeah.
Well, they wrote. I think this mentions on the palisade. It says Croatoan. There's also a tree where they carved. I think it's CRO, which is what they were like supposed to do. It's like short. People assume for Croatoan, but they like went a step further even than like what they were initially saying. Because he's like, oh, carve it on a tree, and they carved it on a tree, and then they also carved it on like the wall surrounding their structure in like full like letters like. Here's an abbreviation, but also like here's the full place.
Here's the
in
full
case you
thing.
don't get it. You know, like we're here probably. If you're gonna look anywhere.
just-
so
I think it's solved. Anyway, have a great week, everybody. Thanks for joining us, Tales from Downside Nash. No, I mean, I know there's like some more mystery about it, and like
There's
that's not
a-
necessarily the most plausible answer, which we're gonna get into theories.
Mhm.
which is going to be new this episode. I'm excited. Ben's got some really good theories.
We got some good
I have some really
theories.
stupid ones that I'll present too. It's fine. I believe in supernatural stuff. I just don't. I'm not gonna. I won't. You know. I won't. I'll foreshadow that. I don't know if these are as smart and built in reality, but it was fine.
It's not what it's not what they would want you to think, you know? The stuff you're going to talk about, it's not what the system, would want to get out there, but, you know.
It's just the most idiotic ideas presented by people who want there to be something that's conspiratorial. And Ben's like, no, we're sticking it to them. Okay?
We're about to be truth-pilled on this
Logic?
podcast, dude. We're about to get
reality.
It's about to
hot
be a
takes
truth
only.
bomb that
Hot
drops on
takes
us.
only.
Just saying.
Okay, I'm ready. I'm ready for these theories.
Okay, well,
give me some juicy ones.
they're theories, but like a lot of this is just like no doy. There's two I have, and the first one is a little more kind of adventurous, I guess. It's the
I'm ready.
theory that because I guess preface. So we already kind of mentioned this. It can't be that the colonists just died in the colony because there were like no human remains. There were no graves besides like people who had like died while they were there. Like
From past.
Yeah, but like it wasn't like 80% of these people were buried. Like there's a slow dying out in this one area, and they all just eventually were gone. They went somewhere, as far as people can tell. As far as all the early accounts and what they noticed, they were like these people left and they're gone, and we just don't know where. If that makes sense.
Yeah, right. Because it wasn't like a clear, like, oh, yep, they were attacked, murdered, all of them.
Yeah, not like,
We got
here's
our
signs of a
answer.
struggle, and they were kidnapped. It's like they left, probably, it seems like, peacefully for probably out of some attempt to find somewhere else to live, due to lack of resources. It's just, where did they go is more the mystery.
Yeah. Yeah, that makes sense to me.
Yeah, so first theory
Okay,
is that they tried to sail home, which sounds kind of crazy because it's like sailing to England, you know? Like, how are these guys in this random colony just going to sail back to England? But it's not crazy.
Hold on. Did they have a ship?
So
Okay,
they
okay,
did
I'm sorry.
have.
I'm sorry.
They did have. Good question, Hunter. They did
Okay,
have
thank you.
a small. It's called a pinnace, I believe, which is just like
Sorry, can you say that one more time?
a pinnace. A pinnace.
You're not helping yourself.
It's just the word, man. Pinnace.
You got to get your mind out of the
Maybe
gutter
there's
there,
a.
man.
you
My
smiled at
God.
me. Your mind was there first. Anyway,
know
so
what
they
you're
had
talking
a
about.
small boat, which if you look at pictures of this type of boat, it's not huge, but it's like
A pinnace.
it's bigger than probably like your average small like
Pinnace.
single sailboat today. It's like a could
Yeah,
probably
you would say it's
carry-
like average size.
it could Some would say average size. A good comfortable
I
size.
swear, it's average.
It could fit like tens of people, you know?
Okay.
So not all of them could go, but if a good number of them were brave enough to sail somewhere, it'd be possible. And what gives
Would
credence?
you say it could fit like, because it was a ship, right?
Yeah,
So it could fit seamen?
I would say so. All sorts of
Sorry,
men.
I'm done. I'm so sorry. I'm so done.
Anyway,
thanks for joining.
thanks
Tales
for
from
joining
Delphi
us.
National-
Anyway, this boat
Okay, I'm ready.
it
I'm
could
ready.
fit
I'm ready. I'm
tens
ready.
of seamen, and it could. There'd been similar attempts to do this before. There was actually a group of shipwrecked passengers. Oh, I don't know if this actually. I think there was. This is two separate things. So there have been people who have been able previously or after to make this journey in a boat this size, and have done it. It sucks, and it like isn't great. Like people die, but like colonists were able
It
to do
does.
this before. It's
Okay.
possible.
I'm gonna look up a
Adding on to that, this boat wouldn't have been large enough to carry all the colonists. Like I said, it could be tens of men, not hundreds. Like they had 115
Right.
total. But there were previous this is after this colony, but there was an example in 1609 where a group of shipwrecked passengers were able to build basically a boat around this size from materials they had. I assume
Oh,
like
wow.
they
Okay.
were probably able to like take different, like maybe they had different wreckage and whatnot, but they were able to build a boat of this size and sail somewhere. So the idea is like,
Right.
oh, maybe if they wanted to get everyone, they built another boat, and that's why everyone was gone. Obviously, maybe a good number of them had died off from like different issues in the area, like tribe conflicts and food
Yeah.
shortages. But anyway, it's within the realm of possibility that they tried to sail somewhere, and maybe they just didn't make it. Maybe they tried to sail home. Maybe they tried to sail somewhere else and
Yeah.
got lost. Again, regardless of that, however, it's unlikely that like all of them would have just sailed somewhere. Like every single colonist
Right.
would have just gone on a boat and just like
And it doesn't
trusted that.
explain. Yeah. And I guess it does explain like why they might have taken down some of their shelter, maybe to make a boat, maybe to just like
get some supplies for
Get
if
some
they were gonna sail
supplies.
somewhere along the coast or whatever. Who knows?
but also it doesn't explain Croton.
True.
That have been written on there. It's probably not the smartest decision.
It's very desperate.
It's very desperate. Like that sounds like at least you give them a little bit more time. I don't know. Yeah. So I get the idea.
Yeah.
Sure. But it's a theory.
It's a theory, and
It's a theory.
it was just one of the ones I saw, and I was like, oh, that's possible. But it's not like the most probably mainstream one. It's not the most
Yeah.
probable, I'd say. It's more just like
Yeah.
a possibility.
Right.
Speaking of more probable theories,
So that was theory number 1. We're on to theory number 2.
yeah. So this,
Theory number
like
2.
you said, and I guess it's the mystery of the Roanoke colony. They wrote Croatoan on like a tree. Like they wrote it where they said they would. And that's what theory number 2 is, that they just, a group of them went to Croatoan Island, which is now called, I believe, Hatteras Island. It's basically an island that's like south in the bay. It's actually a part of that big strip of land that forms the Outer Banks. So there's like the bay with
Okay.
Roanoke. There's this
Okay.
long strip that's like kind of like is sand, sandy beaches, and then island, sand, island, and it's like south of Roanoke as part of that.
Okay.
And it is possible they'd had interactions with the native tribe that lived on Croatoan before. As we mentioned, some of those weren't great, like the village that they murdered accidentally. But I read also, and I don't know how this is possible, but I'm just telling you the straight facts as I read them. There was a Croatoan Native American guy named Manteo who had actually been to England twice, and he actually was given a lordship by the Queen at the time. So like they had bad relations with the Croatoans, but also one of them had been to their home, like the England, and like gotten lorded by the Queen and was like, "Hey, this is sick." So,
Wait. Okay.
yeah, I don't know what the chronology of these events was. I just read them and I thought it'd be,
So,
just throw them
okay.
out for the people.
Again, a lot of the things I had understood from this that I had been given as like, oh, this is why it's so mysterious is A, they didn't have good relations with the American Indian tribes.
Yeah,
You had that. You had B, so the settlers didn't have a good relationship with them. B, the Croatoan piece I always thought was like always aired in mystery. I
you're like,
didn't
oh,
realize
why'd they write that?
But they wrote it because he instructed them, hey, wherever we're going, we're gonna let you know. According to this.
Yeah, according to the National Park Service. Like, I didn't see that in a few of the other places I read, but like it's the
So-
government, it's the U.S. government's like accounting of this.
It might not be
mystery.
true, but it could also just be the most possibility.
It's an official like account. I'm like, yeah, like this is like an official retelling of it, and they're saying like
Right.
this is what happened.
So not only do we have context for why they would have written something, we also have context that not only do they have good relationships with this people, the native inhabitants of the island had good relationship with the settlers. With one of them, Mateo, even having traveled to England
Yeah,
to be named Lord by the Queen.
yeah. Just saying, like, yeah.
What are we doing here, Ben? Why is this?
Okay.
Why is this such a mystery?
I'm still like kind of confused on that too, but there's a story down the road related to this that I think makes this
Okay.
worth it, because I think as I was researching this, I got to a point where I was like, how is this the lost colony?
How
Like,
is this a mystery,
it's lost
man?
in the sense that we don't necessarily have great evidence as to where they ended up, which was kind of the mystery. It's like these people disappear and there's not like any archaeological evidence of them, but also like no doy because it's 1609. Nobody's going anywhere unless they're getting paid. Nobody's checking in on these people. Nobody tries to look for them again until I think like the early 1600s. I think it's like 15 years before Jamestown ends up being formed. So like 15 years go by, and in my research, I know I read about how the inhabitants of Jamestown actually were looking for the Roanoke colonists as well. Like this was a pretty well-known like mystery of we want to figure out what happened to these people. But the problem is there's like this 15-year period where nobody could like get there, or what they did, like they didn't look anywhere because they just didn't have the resources. The leadership didn't care. And then eventually they're like, oh no, this mystery. And it's like, yeah, because you didn't do anything. Like, because you twiddled your thumbs and were like, I guess they're lost. So it's if anything, it's more than it's the horrifying part of it to me is just the evilness of like bureaucracy and what happens when humans don't care about each other. When it's just like
this is actually just a description and an example of
it's just human nature. It's like
government and human nature.
Yeah. So there you go.
Sorry. You can keep going. So there you go, Hunter. Okay, that's why we're here.
That's why we're here, man. It's
I'm sorry. Keep going.
You want me to keep going? Okay.
Yeah, I do.
You just what?
Huh?
What do you just?
I just am simply just in awe that we're about to get to some theories that I know about that are insane. We have like a smoking gun on the scene of the crime. We have a smoking gun and man shot in the head. Mm-hmm. But just because they're like, well, we couldn't find the blood where he had died, they're like, could be aliens. Which is a theory, Ben. It's a theory. Mm-hmm. That's crazy to me. Mm-hmm. That's absolutely insane. I'm so sorry. Keep going. Keep talking.
You're good, man. Okay, the problem, which this kind of does end up getting into why it was a mystery, and still is, but okay, before, like really recently, there wasn't like substantial archaeological evidence of the settlers' like belongings, them leaving behind a trace in any of the nearby regions. Okay. So we're lacking that. In terms of Croatoan Island, because it's like, oh, well, I guess it's Croatoa Island. Like, oh, what about that? What evidence is there of that? A big part of like folklore in that area is this tree. And I actually have a picture, I believe, of what is it. It's like from like, it's a Wikimedia. So like, it's just what it claims to be it. It's on my notes. I can share it and I'll give it to you. I can even...
Yeah, we'll share it on screen right now.
Yeah, but it's a
tree.
This is the
tree.
It's a tree on the island, like Croatoan Island. And it has letters very like faintly carved into it. And the letters are C-O-R-A, so Cora. And the idea is that the settlers got to Croatoa, or at least a subset of them. They stayed there for a while, assumably like weren't in bad terms with the locals because they were able to leave eventually. And that when they were leaving, they were going to go to the Coree, which C-O-R-E-E, which is another indigenous tribe on the mainland, kind of like, the mainland of this region. The idea being that like that was their next clue that they left behind as a pointer of like, here's where we're going next.
Like, hey, we might stop here, but when we're gonna go, then go here. Like, we're gonna stop at Croatoan, and then we're gonna go to.
And then we're going here
Coree.
next, since we're doing this tree thing that apparently doesn't matter to anyone for like 15 years because it's not gonna be money in it, okay? But so the issue with this one is like when I look at, admittedly, recreations of what like the Croatoan tree and carvings look like. Again, there's 2 more photos you can probably bring up. I'll give them to you. You can post them here, Hunter. But there is.
I'm gonna put these 2 photos up right now.
Whoa! One of them is like a recreation of the COR tree, so it's not like the original one. But then there's another photo that's like a really old photo, black and white, of visitors visiting like Roanoke Island. It'd been turned into like a tourist spot at that point. But it's like the palisade where Croatoan is written. And you can see, like, it's very clearly written. It's very intentionally carved, like, as a sign of, like, this is where we're going. Whereas the Cora
Yeah.
tree on Croatoa itself, it's like you have to like look at it the right way. It's like one of those like, what is the pictures that you have to squint at them the right way and then they form some sort of image. I don't remember what they're called, like 3D. There's some sort of, it's like one of those magic eye posters or whatever.
Magic eye posters, yeah.
If you look that up, it's kind of like that, where it's like, oh, I guess yeah, it is Cora. It's not carved; it's more just kind of like indented, but yeah, it's there. Is that what it's called? Not to.
I
tangent,
don't know.
but you can edit this out. Oh yeah.
No, I'm keeping it. Anyway, what were you saying?
It's just basically, I think it's more part of folklore because it's not necessarily like a definitive, like, it's just like, here's a tree and it seems to have this written on it. So maybe the settlers wrote it, but it's not like solid evidence, is what I'm saying. If that makes sense.
Yeah.
Like the Croatoan tree, we have documented that it said that. I'm pretty sure we have photos of at least one of them.
Cora, we're not 100% sure.
Yeah, Cora is
Okay.
more up in the air. But
Gotcha.
recently, I believe this is 2020, there was some archaeological digging done. And it was done on Croatoa, as well as somewhere else, which is going to get into what you're going to talk about. But they did find some limited evidence, but it was mainly bits of ceramic pottery, some bits
But
of
it's
different
evidence
weapons.
nonetheless.
But yeah, it's hard proof that like there's items that, as far as archaeologists can tell,
Yeah.
is like most likely from like the settlers who were from Roanoke. It's not necessarily tied to them 100%, but it's definitely some sort of English settlers from that time period, and it's like on the places that they said they were going to go. So it's limited, but like it's stuff that they would have had at that time at places they just happened to indicate they would go.
Oh.
So
Yeah.
it's limited.
But no.
It's a mystery.
But no, there's
Who
other
knows?
theories that exist besides this one, which has, the freaking key, the lock, the door, everything. But people say, nope, the house doesn't exist. No, instead, here we are now.
But if your hands aren't real, It's like people dealing with this mystery. They're like, yeah, but like, what if history's just wrong, dude?
Which sure. I mean, again, I'm very open and believe in a lot of quote unquote supernatural stuff. Whatever it is, I don't know. Whether it's preternatural, we just don't understand it yet, or if legitimately supernatural, I don't know. This context, this situation, the only way that we could argue for it is if I am on this government conspiracy term, which I don't trust the government.
Mm-hmm.
But this is a lot for me. This is a big stretch. Anyway, there are two more theories that I told Ben right before we started recording this episode. Because, why would you need any other theories besides those two that we saw just recently? But
the one that seems like it's obviously true.
the one that has the most
And then the
evidence
one that's
for
like a
it.
little more wacky. But like, that's like, we were talking before the
More
podcast, like Hunter said.
substantial.
And then he mentioned some of these theories. And I'm like, oh, that's cool. I didn't see that in my research. I'm realizing probably why I didn't see it is because there is like, it feels like a pretty clear answer of what happened.
Right.
And like,
Well, there you go.
these theories are like fun, but it's like, oh, I don't know if they're necessarily
Okay.
that important in the context of like, oh, many possibilities. It's just, they sounded fun. So
Yeah. Well, I'll first start with the one that is just on a part of White's map.
yes,
So
John White.
John White's map. There is a section, and that's what Ben was referring to earlier, which we can talk about more. But there is a section that had this symbol on it. I can show it here.
Yep.
I'm gonna put another piece of media up.
I think how every time we have to like announce that to ourselves because it's like, I guess it's gonna be right here,
I know.
guys. It's gonna be right over here. Over
It's
here.
because I in the last episode we had so many videos, and I actually had someone who reached out and was like, "Hey, I appreciate you doing all these videos. Like, I think it's really, really cool."
Yeah.
And I was like, "That's awesome that you think it's cool." It was so much work for me, though. And I'm like, "Great." The one guy who we don't know and was reaching out to let us know he's excited about our stuff
Oh.
was like, "Hey, I want to affirm you and all the hard work you did. And I'm like, that's awesome. But now, man, now I feel like I got to do more hard work. It's fine.
You're like, thank you. That it wasn't worth
That's
it.
what we're trying to do. We're trying to get people. It wasn't worth it. This poor dude. No, I forgot his username. But shout out to you.
Oh, he's
whoever
just a
you
random
are, if you're
guy?
still listening. Yeah, it was a random guy. I don't know him.
That's awesome.
But I appreciate him.
Shout
He's
out
really
to that
nice.
guy. We
Shout out
love
to that guy.
We love that man or woman or whoever they are.
Whoever they are.
That
They.
person.
But so, but anyway, we're putting up media. We're gonna put up the media here. Here you go. Little icon on the map.
Whoa!
If I've already done it. Whoa!
There it is.
It'll be below you.
Except for audio listeners who are just gonna have to struggle through this section. Oh my
Say this bit
gosh.
sucks.
You're missing out. Go on YouTube.
Go on YouTube.
Drive our
Hey,
Spotify numbers down, dude. Get where it's at.
Okay, I'm sorry. So for Spotify listeners or Apple Apple Podcast listeners, it looks like on a piece of his map there was a cover up. So he used another piece of canvas and somehow put it over it. He covered this up, but there was like this icon in an area that was, I think it was more inland.
Yes.
Do
It
you
was on the
remember? Okay.
mainland and kind of inland of it.
Right.
Which, if you remember the original plan, that kind of makes all this mystery fall apart. Before John White leaves, he's like, okay, you guys, your plan is a group of you is going to head inland to see if you can like establish yourselves a little more, find more resources, maybe get in contact with some friendly tribes. And the rest of you are going to stay. But if you need to evacuate, just right where you're going on a tree.
Yes.
So it seems like the Croatoan thing is referring to the people who stayed and then went to Croatoa, presumably.
Yes.
As you know, like they wrote it on the tree. But there was always, it seems like a plan for a group to kind of head inland somewhere to try to attempt to make contact with tribes, establish some sort of foothold, and, you know, improve their chances of survival. So I think
Right.
that kind of ties into what you're talking about here.
Yeah, and something to say, patchwork on old maps wasn't unusual, right?
Yeah.
It wasn't historically, that happened all the time because of just how maps worked. And like if you had a map that you'd been working on for a while, you obviously can't just copy and paste that over. So they usually did map work. But there's this icon which looks like a 4-pointed star with a red circle with a dot in the middle with like also lines protruding out that they could find underneath it. And from that, from also another piece, but from that, people have then said aliens.
What?
Aliens took the lost colony of Roanoke. Can we get
You know what's
It was
funny?
aliens.
Is I know
It was
in my
aliens.
research I read about this, but like it gave an explanation that makes so much more sense because what that source said was John White knew a location that the settlers might be headed to. I don't know I don't know what time period this would be in terms of like the chronology of this, but they presented the idea that the reason he covered that location up was to keep that location hidden from the Spanish in case they got a hold of the map. I guess maybe it was when he was traveling back
No,
to
Ben.
Roanoke. But the idea is that
That's
he
too
knows where they
plausible.
were going to head inland, but he
No,
doesn't
no,
want
no,
like
no,
the
no,
enemies
no.
of his people to get that location. So he's like, "Oh, I'm going to cover
Ben.
it up. I know where it is." And like there's a
Ben,
picture of the map with the patch on it. Like they've analyzed it, and that ties into other stuff. But anyway, aliens.
Ben,
What were you saying,
no.
Hunter?
That was not to be hidden from Spanish.
It was supposed
It
to be
was to be hidden
us.
from us,
Oh, the people.
the people.
John White equals the deep
Want to
state.
know the truth.
Confirmed.
John White equals the deep
John
state.
White.
No!
Does that mean Mateo is Q, and he's giving us the truth?
What?
Is he
Oh.
this? Is he this story's Q, and he's leaking the
Ah.
information?
What are you referencing?
He has connections to the higher ups, dude. He was lorded by the Queen of England, but it was all a front.
It was all a front. Who's Mateo? Oh, is he the guy who was
He's the guy who went to England from the tribe that they probably went and hung out with because they seemed to be on decent terms at some point. Even though, yes, admittedly they did murder one of their villages.
No, man, it's aliens. and so
our mics are going to be like peaking so much.
You're stupid. You're stupid. I'm looking at all of you.
Okay.
You're dumb. You're dumb.
Okay,
You're
what's your
dumb.
point, man?
Well, the other thing that people press off the too is his map apparently is extremely accurate.
Yeah, that's why
For some,
the archaeological findings, the other place inland that they found it besides Croatoan was the area he marked.
right, was the area he marked.
Yeah, which ties it
But
in. It
everybady's
makes a lot of
saying
sense.
that
With the
seems
mainline
like
theory, you know? They
But no,
just left.
That seems like sacred knowledge to some people. So they're like, oh, he must have gotten that from an extra source.
Oh, it's because it's so accurate. It was the terrestrials, the extraterrestrials.
So that's a theory that people have. This,
Interesting.
This
It
next
feels like
theory,
it feels like someone seeing a car crash, and like there's like maybe like a car in the back that like ran into another car that stopped, and there's a fender bender, and they're like, dude, that fender bender looks that looks terrible, man. That's gonna cost so much money, and it's like, yeah, there's a car crash right in front of you too. Like you're missing the point. Like you see like this guy had a map, and as of like 4 years ago, which admittedly is recent, but they found physical evidence of people being there that, you know, aren't necessarily the Roanoke settlers, but it's where it was marked on this guy's map who's tied to the Roanoke people, and they found stuff there that would be likely from them. It's like aliens.
I just find that there's and first of all, aliens likely real, whatever they are. This extra thing that we don't know about yet, likely real. The government is going out with all this stuff. So it's not like I'm saying I don't believe that. I just don't believe that this situation is this. Like, what are they going to complicate it? Okay?
Feels
And
like
that's not
somebody
even the
just-
craziest theory.
Yeah.
Okay?
Yeah.
Okay? This one was from BuzzFeed Unsolved when they were still doing their thing with
That's
Shane
fun.
Bidet and Ryan Bergara. You know, fun groups. Fun guys.
Yeah, before they got canceled.
They didn't get well, I guess they kind of
I think kind of. It was more like just like
They didn't get canceled.
they made a bad
They're-
business
they're still
decision and
doing
then they went back on
stuff.
it. So it's not.
Right. They did apologize, which, you know, we got to give them that. They did apologize, and they've been doing fun stuff.
Yeah. Wasn't anything like personal lives. It was just like, oh, here's a business move, and people were like, we don't like that, and they're like, oh, okay, we'll go
And
back.
they're like, oh, yeah, my
Which
bad.
is, you know, that's fair.
Right.
Not the worst thing.
Well, anyway, the theory that they presented, this is how I figured it out, how I got this theory.
Okay.
And I need you to get ready for it, Ben.
I'm ready. I'm so ready.
They found evidence of cannibalism inside when they excavated the Roanoke Island.
Who found evidence?
Scientists.
What scientists?
Found evidence. I feel bad because I don't know the answer to this.
Okay.
I
really
can't
wanna
remember
look this
who
up
did.
now because it just
Some
did not show up.
university-
But I'm very curious. Keep going. Keep
It's not, again, it's not like, because that makes it seem like it was like deep. Like this was evidence that they had found on this island, but
Oh.
it wasn't like
Keep going.
It wasn't like a mass grave. What did you find it?
Okay, give me a second. You keep going.
Okay, sorry. Okay. So they found evidence of cannibalism, which Ben will get in a second here is going to affirm that belief and who did it. He's reading.
Okay, well this is Jamestown. But okay.
Maybe this is just completely wrong. And it could be. But according to what I know,
in Jamestown there is one confirmed case where they had a. This is kind of terrible. What is like a? What did they say? Was this like a 16-year-old, 14-year-old girl who died and they ate her? Is this real?
oh my
gosh!
gosh.
I mean, it's Wikipedia. Yeah, a teenage girl of about 14 years were forensically examined and shown to have telltale marks consistent with butchering meat. Jeezle.
Okay,
Just throw
well,
that out there into the universe.
that's really sad. However, at least she was dead.
presumably.
That's a good point. Gosh darn it. Well, that's really sad. Anyway, so they had done apparently excavation of the area or areas around it.
Okay.
And the belief is this, Ben. Ready? Wasn't just cannibalism. It was the first recorded case of a zombie plague.
Okay.
And that's the theory.
What's the evidence for that?
Well, because there's so much cannibalism apparently that was on this island that we can't even affirm right now that there could have been a zombie plague because it was on an island. It just didn't spread. And that's a theory that people hold about this.
Interesting.
Any thoughts on it?
I just don't know what would be the train of logic to get to that point.
Cannibalism.
So is the presumption that cannibalism just leads to zombification?
Well, because
And
it's
of
a mystery,
the eater?
Ben.
The eater becomes zombified?
Yeah.
I feel like this gets more into the... Should I say that word? It's not a bad word. It's just...
What word?
It's the word that Wendigoon bases his name off of. But I know indigenous people, there's like certain sects of people who are...
Oh, we already said the word Wendigo.
Wendigo, yeah.
Wendigo.
I just know some
Yeah, I
people are like,
think
oh... Because, like in
we had
folklore,
said
it's saying
that.
it. But like that, the idea of that, as far
It's
as I understand, is the
disrespectful,
idea
I'm
that like...
sorry.
Yeah.
Let us know. We'll
Just
stop
to
saying
we're
it.
referring to it in the academic sense.
Yes.
The idea behind that, as far as I understand it, is cannibalism being tied to you becoming possessed, like being like taken over, losing control of yourself, and like
My favorite, Ben, of all this situation, I love that you're like actually, which I appreciate that we're doing this, but you're actually trying to give like some substance to this theory versus a little guy in the corner who's like like a little kid. He's in the corner, he's just sweating because he just read about this, and he goes, "What happens? What happens if they actually ate each other, and that was zombies?" And that's it. That's all there is to it. Well, that's still a theory.
I'm sure, but I'm just saying, I'm sure like there's themes there that are represented in other contexts. And it's like, oh, I see how
Yeah,
someone
okay.
as like a fun. It sounds like a good idea for like a story. I'm pretty sure
Right.
there is some sort of there's an American Horror Story episode, right? That is that.
Well, I don't know if it's on that. I know that it is a what's it called? Whoa. It's Sam and Dean. Sam and Dean, they're from the Supernatural. That show, do you know Supernatural?
Yeah, I know Supernatural.
They have a disease called Croatoan.
Oh. Because the idea that it's just like the settlers went crazy and they like ate each other. Which doesn't vibe with the whole they disappear without a trace.
And
but,
so the belief is that it is a zombie plague that the devil cast down or something like that, something crazy. And that is what happened to things. So it is the actual theory that people have, and maybe it's based off of the show Supernatural. I don't know, man. I really don't know. But that's the idea, that there was a zombie plague. The first place it happened was in Roanoke, and it's called the Croatoan disease.
There you go.
Okay.
I think we solved it actually. Whatever we said before, it's not that. It's this thing.
It's this one. This one
It
makes
just
more
feels
sense to
right.
me. So anyway, I think like that's kind of it for the theories. You have extra notes though, Ben.
I have
What
a lot
else
of
is there?
notes. This I'm probably gonna have to compress down a little bit, but
You give us the synopsis.
yeah. So it's in line with what we've been talking about. There's a
Right.
historian actually that I had a fun quote talking about Roanoke, where he says it's the Area 51 of colonial history. And I think that's very true.
That's cool.
In terms of kind of what
Yeah,
you've talked about. It's like people go from like, oh, they left for this thing and we're trying to find them, to like it's the zombies or it's the aliens. It's like, oh, it's a whole range, the whole spectrum. But I think regardless of what happened, there is this story is open to sensationalism, It's open
Right.
to somebody coming up with an explanation and presenting it, and people being interested. People want answers. There's motivation there, and that kind of leads into this story surrounding this last thing we're going to talk about, which is the Dare Stones. So, I guess I should just give a synopsis of it.
Give a synopsis
Yeah.
of the Dare Stones. This is something that, because I heard this so many times, I had yet to hear this.
Okay, and
I'm
this is
excited
there's
to
a
talk about this.
there's a lot here, but
So they
anyway,
say this is an extended history on Lost Colony of Roanoke, and this I don't know if this like affirms a theory, but there's more to it than just
yeah,
what we
and
have
there's a.
originally.
It's interesting because I feel like it's a mix of things. It's a mix of stuff where it's like it's interesting and a mix of stuff like let's get into it. This takes place
Ready.
in 1937, which is a little bit past like all the
Just a
Roanoke
little
stuff.
bit.
This is like 400 years later, 300
Just a
years
little
later.
bit.
You know, 350 years later. So in November of 1937, a man named Louis E. Hammond, who claimed to be a Californian man who was traveling around the country with his wife, he shows up at Emory University in Atlanta, Georgia, and he has with him a stone. It's a stone about this big, I believe, and it has this crude inscription in it that's been chiseled in. He claims to have found it in Chowan County in North Carolina, and he brought it to them because he believed it had some historical significance to... I don't know if he knew this, but it seemed to have some historical significance regarding what maybe could have happened to the Roanoke colonists. So Hunter, this is in kind of weird English, so if you want to take it slow or whatever, it's kind of a little weird to read, but would you mind reading this inscription for us?
Yeah, should I do my best British accent?
Sure.
Oh God, no, never mind.
No, you don't have to. That's fine.
Ananias there, and Virginia went hence to heaven, 1591. Any Englishman okay.
Yeah, just read it normally.
I'm done. Any Englishman show this rock to John White, governor of Virginia. Father, soon after you go for England, we came here. Only misery and war for 2 years. Above half dead these 2 years, more from sickness, being 24. A savage with me, a message of a ship came to us. Within a small space of time, they became frightened of revenge and ran all away. We believe it was not you. Soon after the savages said spirits were angry. Suddenly, they murdered all save 7. So they murdered everyone except 7.
Yeah.
My child, Ananias, too, were slain with much misery, buried all near 4 miles east of this river upon a small hill. Name were written all there on a rock. Put this there also. If a savage shows this to you, we promised you would give them plenty presents. EWD.
Thank you. EWD. Now, coincidentally enough, those happen to be the initials of John White's daughter, Elizabeth White Dare.
White Dare.
Note also that
Okay.
this seems to be almost like a tombstone for Ananias and Virginia. Virginia is the child of Elizabeth, who was the first baby born in the New World, and Ananias was her husband. So what this stone claims to be is a tombstone for Elizabeth's husband and daughter, the son-in-law and granddaughter of John White.
Is there a picture of this stone?
If you look it up, there's a bunch of pictures around.
Let me make sure before I say we're gonna put it on screen.
Yeah, there's definitely like a public domain picture of it that we can show, but it's very roughly carved. Like you'll notice looking at it that it definitely looks like somebody had to like chisel it in.
Oh wow! Yep. Okay, we're gonna put it on screen.
Yeah.
Wow. Okay. All right.
So
We're
you
cooking.
tracking kind
Keep
of
going.
what this stone is claiming to provide is an explanation to the ultimate
What happened to
fate of at least some of the colonists, that they traveled inland, they were besieged by sickness. When they use the word savage, obviously that's a very crude reference to the native people because they're
Yeah.
Englishmen from this time. So that's just what they do.
Unfortunately.
That's how they talk. So they talk about how the indigenous people, one of them comes and mentions a ship that they saw on shore that they were frightened of, but Elizabeth doesn't believe that that was John White. She believes that was someone else. But it could have been. Who knows? They saw a ship that was around the Roanoke area at a certain time, and they gave a report to Elizabeth. But then after it mentions the spirits were angry. Basically, the native people had some sort of fear of some negative spiritual, I don't know what the word is, like an aura or a presence that was related to the colonists, and that motivated them eventually to attack the colonists. And that is why
Interesting. Okay.
she says all but 7 of us were killed. She mentions how, her husband and daughter were killed, and that this stone kind of serves as a commemorative tombstone in their name. It also mentions another rock where the names are written. So that kind of
And
ends
did
up.
they ever find those?
That's the mystery, That's I guess that's
okay,
the next
so-
step of we found this
Well,
stone
where
in
it
this
happened
area.
those? Yeah.
What happened to those? And if we find those, this is going to be some more confirmatory evidence of this being true. So this guy, Louis E. Hammond, shows this to a bunch of professors at Emory, and they are understandably very interested. So they accompany
Right.
him back to the river, to the general area he said he found the stone. And while he can't specifically find like the exact spot that he found it, they generally end up viewing him as a reliable source. They get the vibe that he's not in it for any sort of like major like media attention, or that he's like trying to sell them on some like snake oil tale. He seems
Right.
legit. So they end up publishing about it in one of their academic journals. A key name here is an Emory professor named Haywood Pierce Jr.
Okay.
I'm just going to refer to him as Pierce, and the Pierces, who become a pretty big figure in this story. He writes about basically the stone in this journal, its underlying claims. He notes that what the stone talks about is actually in line with another colonist writer who wasn't directly involved in the Roanoke colony, but was in kind of that era of history and reported different stories that he heard that kind of lined up with what this stone told about a massacre
Right.
happening, about them moving inland and being besieged by sickness, and a massacre happening, specifically that kind of all being lined up with that historical account. So eventually Pierce gets more and more like interested in this stone, and he and his family, specifically I believe his father, who was the head of another university, Brenau University, they get really involved in this big public campaign to try to like push for searches, push for examinations and exploration to be done. They offer what would now be $11,000 as like a reward for anyone who can bring another stone or any sort of evidence that corroborates this finding. And that leads me into a very convoluted saga that I'll try to shorten down, involving a man named Bill Eberhart. So let's talk about Bill.
Bill Eberhart.
Yeah. In May of 1939, so this is less than 2 years after the initial finding, and throughout those years, Pierce is making this more public and trying to promote an awareness about it. You have this guy named Bill Eberhart. Shows up to Brenau University, which is now where they're keeping the stone. Pierce's dad is, involved in Brenau. He's the head of Brenau, and they're kind of like the university supporting this project. Bill Eberhart shows up, and he shows up multiple times, and he keeps presenting stones, but they don't match the. Sorry, I don't want to present this in a biased way, but Eberhart presents stone after stone to the Pierces, and they're like, "This doesn't match up." And eventually
Right,
they
this
show
isn't it.
Eberhart the original stone, and like, this is what we're actually looking for. So if you find something like this, bring it to us. Soon after, Eberhart shows up with a new stone that conveniently enough matches the original stone's style and appearance. Now you might think that this is suspicious, which it is, but also note that Eberhart, and Pierce knows this, Pierce knows that Eberhart is a backwoods stone carver from like the middle of nowhere, South Carolina, which is where he claims to have found this first stone. First, or I guess this stone. The first stone was found in North Carolina. This stone he found is in South Carolina, which is far, but in the general region. Also, Eberhard has like a third grade level education. Isn't super well educated. He's very much like a country guy out in the woods doing more manual labor. Yeah. And Pierce reasons that like if anyone's going to be able to fake this, it's probably not this guy. And they look at the stone and it seems to match the original stone in a lot of ways that corroborate its authenticity. It's not an exact match. A little of the language is weird, but overall it's a convincing enough match for him to not believe that Eberhard is the one who manufactured this.
Yeah.
He does, however, have some doubts, so he makes Eberhard an offer. He offers to buy the land, and at first Eberhard is like, oh, you can buy my land, but I've already removed all the stones from it. So, like, you have to go through me, which is also interesting. But he offers...
Yeah, a little interesting.
So he retorts, Pierce retorts with another offer. He says, I'll give you $500 for this first stone, and I'll also buy this land, and we'll just work from there. Or I'll give you $100 for this stone, and we're going to investigate your land. We're going to examine it. But for every stone we find after that, you get a 50% stake in its value. And Eberhard chooses the latter, and Pierce, for whatever reason, views that as a sign that he's authentic, even though if you think about it, it's kind of just in motivating him to provide more and more stones. Which I guess maybe he could make. I'm
imagining this dude. He's just making all these stones and just laying them around like an Easter egg hunt.
Mm-hmm.
They're like, we found another.
Oh, there's another one.
We found another.
Speaking of another.
We found.
They, Eberhard chooses the latter option. And over, I think, the next few months, he presents 13 different stones that he claims to have found in this area, which ends up being, the area is 400 miles away from where the first stone was found. But Pierce is invested at this point, so he's like, okay, maybe they kept traveling. Maybe this is the survivors. That's 7. They worked their way down. It's possible.
Eberhard is just milking this as far as he possibly can take it.
You don't know that. You don't know that.
I don't. Okay, keep going.
It's Eberhard, right? It's one guy. Kind of weird.
Yeah.
What if I told you there's another man who shows up? Isaac Turner.
Oh, okay.
Who presents the 15th stone now found. And he says he found it in Georgia, Hall County, Georgia. And he claims to have found it months before Eberhard even reached out to Pierce. He found it, Hunter, independently from any involvement of Eberhard.
I'm back in.
So at this point,
call me
15
intrigued.
stones, 14 additional ones, because you have the original, now you have 14 ones that have shown up. 13 admittedly from Eberhard, but you got a new one from a different guy. Interesting. So the stone actually matches, it's pretty close to what Eberhard had been turning in, which again gives credence to this theory. And, Eberhard's still on that grind set. So over the next few months, he shows up with 9 more stones that also have inscriptions. And I cut this for time, but the stories that the stones say aren't crazy, but they're kind of interesting. Like they talk about how Elizabeth gets married to a Native American chief and like all these different things. Like it's lore building, which is very interesting if anyone wants to look into that. From what I saw, it wasn't crazy claims, but it definitely like builds the fan fiction in some interesting ways, It's weaving a tale.
Yeah. It's just very funny to me right now of like the thought of like this guy being so intrigued in this and this dude just being like, well, what about this one? He's like, well, that's not the one we're looking for. He's like, all right. What about this one? Not the one we're looking for. All right. What about this one? They're like, all right, hold on. Let's show you what it looks like. They show him the stone. He goes, all right. Now what about this one? Like, whoa, okay. After they show him the stone, okay? And then
it's funny that that's the time he finally finds the correct one,
The correct one.
It's just convenient timing.
And then he's like, I got 13 more of those. They're like, what? Which apparently he's got way more.
Well, hold on. He's not done yet, Hunter.
He's not done yet.
He's not done yet. Because those 13 original ones are found. Isaac Turner shows up with another one. And then Eberhard all of a sudden starts finding stones also in Georgia, conveniently in areas of land that happen to be less than 4 miles from his own house. So he's finding stone after stone. He finds 9 more, and then he finds 3 more, and then he starts finding stones actually with Turner, the guy who found the other stone. They actually start finding stones together. And they aren't, Eberhard and Turner, they don't ever mention there's any association between the two. They're two independents, but they just start working together out of nowhere. Keep finding more and more stones from Eberhard's house or near his residence. They even find a carving in a cave that ends up being taken out and stolen by some random teenager. And then Pierce has to make a deal with the teenager in order to buy it back from him. So
I just
all this
love
stuff is
poor
happening.
Pierce. Poor Pierce is just like,
Buying stone after stone. And at this point, he's too far in. Like, if you bought 31 stones from a guy, can you, is it easy to admit whether or not, what if you're wrong, At that point, you're too far in. You're invested.
Yeah.
So in total, Eberhard and Turner find 47 stones. So you have 48 in total in this collection now. The first one from that Californian guy, and then 47 from these 2 other people, mostly from Eberhard. And it's funny because as it goes on and on, more of them just seem to be close to where Eberhard lives. And also, whenever he brings them, Pierce says, "Oh, cool. Next time you find one, leave it where it is, and we'll come look at it." And Eberhard just ignores this and keeps bringing stones that he just has perfectly cleaned off, ready for them. And this happens several times.
Man, I think this is another solved story.
But
I
wait,
think the original stone was probably true,
so you're okay.
but keep going.
You think okay, at this point we need some clarity. We need some experts. We have this
Right.
stone carver giving us stones that have carvings in them, and we don't know if they're legit. So in 1940, Pierce arranges for a scientific conference where a bunch of independent scholars will come in, and they're going to look at these stones at Brunel University, and they're going to try to ascertain their authenticity. And they mostly come up inconclusive. From what I read, it seems like they probably didn't think the stones were super legit, but they didn't want to be rude. So they were like, we don't really know for sure. Some of the language seems to match, but also some of the words didn't exist in the English language until later. But who really knows? We don't want to be rude for whatever reason. So it's not a definitive answer either way. But then Pierce, still motivated to keep this going, submits an article
Pierce.
to the Saturday Evening Post. And it's an article about the stones. He wants to keep getting the story out there, hopefully probably get a source besides Eberhard to find another stone. And there's a journalist from the Saturday Evening Post put on this story, Boyden Sparks. He's put on the story to fact check it. And it's tough because there's not really any way to fact check anything because it's all just 2 guys. So what does he do? He looks into these guys, and he happens to find that Eberhard and Turner have actually known each other for years. They're actually pretty close friends. So that, especially all 47 of these stones have come from a group of friends who just happen to claim to have found them independently, and they all look the same. So he finds that and ends up writing an article about how this seems like a lot of BS. He also tries to look into Louis Hammond, that Californian tourist from the beginning, and can't find any records of him or where he went. And also notes that even though Mr. Hammond claimed to be traveling with his wife, none of the professors ever met his wife at all. Nobody knows where he went, and nobody ever met the wife he claimed to have been traveling the country with. So he's just in the wind.
So, Ben, you're telling me we spent the last 15 minutes considering that there is potential more history to this Roanoke mystery. Oh, that was pretty fun.
What happened?
And I said mystery to this Roanoke history.
Oh!
Whoa! And you're telling me right now They can't find these people. And the two that they said, no.
We're just
We don't know each other.
we're just looking into it, man. We just are.
You're just looking into it.
Associates of circumstance. Just happen to be. They've known each other for years.
They've known
pretty
each
close
other
friends.
for years. Okay, so what's the ending of the story?
So, Louis Hammond's still in the wind, but Eberhardt's pretty suspicious. So soon after this article is published, Eberhardt goes to meet with Pierce's mother, Lucille, who is also involved in this. So this isn't just random, but he meets with her, and he gives her a stone, and on the stone is inscribed, "Pierce and Dare Historical Hoaxes, We Dare Anything."
Okay.
And Lucille, at least, according to her account, claims that Eberhardt demands $200 in payment, or he's going to give this stone to the Saturday Evening Post, and basically fully officially confess that all this was a forgery. Now later, the Pierces go to the Post and they tell them this, and then Eberhardt claims that none of this happened. But he also claims that the stone is real and that he found the blackmail stone the same way he found the other stones. I don't know what he was thinking with that one, but he's like, no, it's real. I just didn't write it.
What?
It's just, I don't know. He does the ultimate like YouTuber denial thing where he's like, I don't know. What is this?
Like, I've been continuing on this stupid story. He is so uncreative that he's like, actually, I found this as well from history. Oh my god!
I like to imagine
Oh
it was
my
like a
God.
little kid when you like they're lying to you and you're trying to be like, so did you knock over the thing? And it's like, no. Like, well, what happened to it? He's like, oh, I just found it there. Yeah. Well, what's this ball doing here? He's like, oh, yeah, actually the ball did break it, but it did it by itself. I didn't throw the ball. No, I saw it move. It just did it by itself. It's like
So-
he's saying things that don't make sense. But he's just
then
like,
where does
sure.
this end up?
Okay. So, as far as we can tell, not a good sign for stones 2 through 48. But there is that question of Louis Hammond, right? Now, attempts have been made to reach out to Louis Hammond after this happened. They were trying to kind of figure out who this guy was.
Right.
They weren't really able to contact him ever. But there's been some scientific analysis of the stones because all 48 are still in Brunel University. They haven't trashed the other 47. They just kind of kept them and they're historical in a sense.
Hey, there's something.
There's something here.
Right.
It's a great story, guys. And it is, okay, for the first stone, they've done some scientific analysis on it. They've looked at the writing style. And from what scholars can tell over the years, it does seem to be pretty legit. They, I think, have cut into the base of the stone and seen the difference between the coloration on the outside and the inside and determined that to make it look that old would take chemicals and tools and technology that would not have been available to the average person in
this is Louis.
1937.
Yeah, okay.
And also the writing style actually is in line with how people would have written at that time. Whereas the other 47, it kind of varied. Sometimes it was, and then they'd use words that didn't exist at that time, but it lines up 90%. But all that to say, there is one stone that does, as far as we know from modern research, seems to be pretty credible. And I
Okay,
think
the
even
original one.
if you look at all the, remove all the ridiculous story, I think it's fun. I think it's funny how this guy with a 3rd grade level education was able to dupe a university professor for years and did the crazy blackmail plot at the end. I think it's all great. But if you look back at the original stone, I think it is actually a really interesting final note of what could have happened to the colonists.
Right.
And if it is real, I think it is it gets back to, I think, the core of the story that I thought was really interesting, which is the idea of John White leaving his family and then coming back and not having an answer. And just the idea that his daughter, while she was still alive, tried to kind of leave something behind for him to find. I think that's really
Right.
tragic, but also really cool and emotionally interesting.
Right. There's an end to the story. And the end, well, no, it might not be Eberhard
Yeah.
or Turner. The end is possibly the Hammond the Dare Rock, the Dare
Yeah.
Stone.
The one where it's just a daughter writing to her father, being like, "Here's what happened."
And so we have this story, we have the Roanoke story, and it tells us one thing, Ben.
Mm-hmm.
And that is people are messed up, and
Yeah.
we can do what we can. We can do what we can, but at the end of the day, someone's going to either for an obsession or for the sake of discovery and money, may do some stuff in their life that's not the greatest. But at the end of the day, it's not about the journey. It's not about the journey. It's about the friends we made along the way.
Wow.
So I think that's awesome.
Hmm.
The Eberhard story. I'm like, oh my gosh, this new piece, which I guess Hammond's is still like.
As far as we can tell, the stone itself is real, even
Right.
though he's gone and just never
love
showed up again.
How you present? I love how you present Eberhard's stones just to represent like, hey, this guy got so duped. This dude got so screwed in this situation.
But I think it kind of speaks to what the story is. I think it's a mystery if you want to make it one. But apart from that, it's just like kind of a sad story about how people were not cared for. But like even in that, they tried to survive and they were trying to do their best. I don't know. Like I think there's the real story, which is like some people got left behind and they did what they could and they followed the plan. And even though like they lost family members, they kept going. And maybe some of them did end up, living a full life. I know if you look at the sources, there's a lot of reports of, and obviously the more colonists got there, the more it's hard to tell what is specifically Roanoke. But there's plenty of like historical accounts of here's native tribes with kids that seem to be like mixed between English and Native American, or like colonists who moved into Native American tribes and kind of just adapted their ways and integrated and lived there as part of that people. So like it's very possible that like at least a small number of them just ended up living with the Native Americans fairly peacefully, and were able to live without the rest of their days, in relative peace. But yeah, I think it's just interesting that this story, and I think a lot of it was just like the lack of stuff we found out very recently, but a lot of this story is just like they left, and of course they were lost because they left. But then like people were like, oh, but what if aliens? And it's like, sure, we can sell the stones, or we can look at the one we have and be content with that.
Right.
So what do you think happened, Hunter? What's the answer to the Roanoke lost colony?
Ben, I don't think we'll ever know. And while there was one very clear answer to this whole situation,
not 100% confirmed.
it's still a mystery.
Just a lot of signs
apparently.
pointing to it as likely.
And am I mad about it? No. Am I mad that we spent a whole video talking about a situation that everybody thinks is still very much a mystery when in reality there's likely a lot of evidence that support that it's not? And there's a lot of clear places in which we could go? No, I'm not mad about that. Anyway. So, Ben, that was awesome. I'm so glad we did it together.
Me too.
And with all of you.
Yeah, all you lovely viewers. I'm going to look at the camera now. Isn't that nice?
Stop looking at the camera that way.
Just some
It's
nice
kind
eye
of concerning. It's almost threatening.
Is it?
Stop. Yeah.
I see you. Oh, look at all those lovely viewers. Look at all those lovely viewers.
I hate it. No, please. Gosh. Okay. Ben, do you want to close us out on this episode?
Yeah. I mean, just tales all this time. Maybe we'll never know the answer, so I think at some point we do just have to say goodbye, as much as we'd hate to. So I'd like to thank everyone for joining us in Delphi National Park today. The links to all the sources that we used, all the stories, if you want to look into this more, if there's actually some uncovered answer we didn't cover, All those will be in the description, as well as any important information. If you enjoyed this show and want to hear more, we would really appreciate if you followed and subscribed. As we said, we're going to be trying to post every other week. If you want to keep following this journey on, we would very much appreciate it. Also, since Hunter and I, of course, are new to this, this is our third episode. We would love to hear your feedback on anything, be it technical or the way we frame things, the way we go through the content, what we should focus on, especially like topics. If you guys have any mysteries you want us to look into, we would love that. Also, if you want to give us a rating, if you want us to give a like, if you want to leave a comment, engage. We are engagement farmers. Again, thank you all so much for joining us around the campfire. It's been a pleasure.
Been a pleasure. With that, goodbye.
Goodbye.
Goodbye. Goodbye.
Bye. Bye.